Let's sit nice and tall. Close the eyes. Taking a breath in, allow that breath to ground you. Breathing out, allow that breath to free you. Breathing in, receive the gift of life. Breathing out, express gratitude for that gift. Breathing in, become more aware. Breathing out, less judgmental. Breathing in, awaken consciousness. Breathing out, release any obstacles to that consciousness. Drawing the hands together in front of the heart. We'll lift our voices in one Om, and then we'll chant the first 3 mantras on the sheet. Taking a breath in. Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Ganana Antva Ganapatigam Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jestarajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anaf Shrinvanuti Bisidha Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhir Vajini Vati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Divo Brahataf Parvata Da Saraswati Ajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Gritachi Shagman Novacha Mushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha Charanam Pavitram Vitatam Puranam Yena Putastarati Dushkritani Tena Pavitrena Shuddhena Putaha Atipapmana Maratin Tarema Shri Sadguru Charana Ravindhabhyan Namaha. And then just gently fluttering the eyes open if they're not already. So some of you were here on retreat this weekend, and we've been exploring metta, what's called metta meditation, the practice of loving kindness. And when I teach metta, I like to accompany that with forgiveness and compassion, because they do go hand in hand with one another. It's really impossible to practice a depth of loving kindness unless you also practice forgiveness. Otherwise, it's overshadowed by resentment. It's overshadowed by stories. It's overshadowed by impressions of the past. So we have to have a practice of forgiveness right alongside the metta practice. And metta is loving kindness. Compassion is the essence of loving kindness. So it's important that we explore that as well, that we look at that and say, loving kindness is not being nice. So that's number one. Loving kindness is not being nice. Loving kindness is having and expressing empathy for the suffering of another human being. It is having and expressing gratitude for anything good, positive, and uplifting that may happen to them, for their happiness. It is having and expressing compassion for their suffering, no matter whether it is self-driven suffering or suffering that was beyond their control. And it is having and expressing a kind of neutrality toward misbehaviors that they partake in. So let's start with the last one, because that's usually the most difficult. Neutrality toward the misbehavior of others. What does that mean? Should I just kind of ignore them? Should I make excuses for them? Should I just write it off as, everybody misbehaves? Do I become apathetic? The answer to that is no. That's not what it means at all. To have neutrality toward the misbehavior of others is really very simply the decision to not get caught up in the drama of what is going on. So I'm not going to sit here and say, I wish things could be different, or I'm going to try to anyway. And say, I wish things could be different, or tell the story over and over again, amplifying and exaggerating details or downplaying details. I'm not going to get caught up in that part of it. I'm going to see clearly that there has been a misbehavior. I'm going to try to see clearly the damage or the harm that has inflicted. And then I'm going to be responsive to that harm in whatever way is needed that is reasonable within my realm that I can do. So one very, very straightforward example of that is in times of war when people are displaced, when they've lost so much, we typically have a tendency to get caught up in the dissatisfaction about the presence of war. We become dissatisfied with politicians. We become dissatisfied with the treaty process. We become dissatisfied and we complain. We complain. And maybe we throw a few bucks at some organization who provides, Doctors Without Borders or something like that. What is that doing? Now, the donation is certainly helping, but what is the rest of it doing? What is the complaining doing? It's doing nothing except embroiling you in a place of dissatisfaction and discontent. Complain less, act more. Complain less, donate more. Complain less, serve more. If we are that distraught over the presence of war in this world, what exactly are we ourselves doing to negate that presence? To be the opposite of it? Because a big war in our or some other country is a mere reflection of the war going on within ourselves, within our community, within our family. What are we doing to be the peacemaker, the peace bringer, and the peacekeeper? We need to start with ourselves first and recognize that oftentimes we become embroiled in our own behaviors that actually amplify suffering, that actually amplify our own suffering and the suffering of others around us. If we go about complaining and dramatically, and we do have a tendency to be drama because we're all actors at heart, are we not? Yeah, we all want to be in the limelight on the big screen, and so we practice our acting when it comes to drama, right? So we really give in to our angry mode, to our dissatisfied mode, to the mode where we have the answer. We give in to that, and we tell everybody who will listen to us. But think about that for a moment. If I came across you walking down the street one day, and you were having a beautiful, blissful walk, and you felt at one with nature, and you were really intended on working through some difficult things that were going on in your life, and you found a moment of peace. And I come up to you, and I start complaining. Right? What am I stealing from you? That's right. I'm stealing from you that peace. I'm stealing from you that moment, and I'm doing it for no good reason. If I need somebody to talk to because the weight of carrying, the understanding that there's a war going on in the world, many of them actually, then it's my responsibility to find somebody to talk to be open about what it is that I need as much as I can, because I may not even know myself, but to not put that burden onto other people. And especially in the mode of stealing their peace from them. So when we talk about being neutral in the face of other people's misbehaviors, and how it's written in the scripture is the evil that others do, being neutral to the evil that others do, does not mean to be okay with it. It means to not buy into the drama of it, allowing that drama to derail you from your spiritual work, from your inner work, from your self-responsibility, and from your service to the greater good. A lot of times when students read that, they don't have really much of a problem with the first three, but that last one gets them. They go, I don't know. I can't be indifferent to someone else being poorly behaved. It's not me. It's not who I should have to say something. Why do you have to say something? Why do you have to say? What part of you is it that wants to say something? Is it the part that wishes to be superior? Is it the part that wishes everyone to believe that you've never behaved in such a way? We can all giggle at that one, can we not? Yeah, because we've all been tyrants at some point or another in our life. What part is it? Is it the part that wants to brainwash your own self into believing that you're above that type of behavior? So there's a lot that goes along with that particular practice, but it's very important. Now, the first one is to be happy for the happiness of others, right? Be happy for the happiness of others. And this is also a difficult one, even though it might seem on the face of it to be a little less difficult than the other. Be happy for the happiness of others. Be grateful for the happiness of others. Be joyful when you see someone else happy. You don't have to agree with why they're happy. No, you just don't. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to agree with why they're happy. Their happiness may be, some kind of deviousness. It's okay. Be happy that in that moment they're feeling some level of happiness, which is likely going to, at least in that moment, stop them from being violent in this life. Yeah, stop them from being harmful, at least in that moment, because they're having some level of satisfaction. Better they be satisfied, even if it's from some not so ethical source, than they be on a rampage. Because on a rampage, a lot of disaster happens, a lot of harm happens. Somebody wins the lottery and we say, oh, they didn't deserve it. Don't say that. Say, oh my gosh, thank goodness they won the lottery. Maybe they'll be able to put a roof over their own heads, keep it there, feed their family, do good deeds in society. Well, they're not a good person. Any deeds they do wouldn't mean much anyway. How do you know? Because most good deeds are basically anonymous. The person receiving some consequence of a good deed often doesn't know where the good deed came from, unless it's like directly given. All that matters is that the goodness travels between us. That's all that matters. So don't condemn someone for where the happiness is being derived from, but do be mindful that you understand the difference between genuine happiness and temporary satisfaction. But don't deny them temporary satisfaction either. And also be mindful that you yourself know the difference between happiness or temporary satisfaction that is not harming and that which is. Because happiness is an interesting word, is it not? We say, I want to be happy. What does that mean? Typically when we say, I want to be happy, what we mean is, I want to be satisfied. I don't want to be uncomfortable. And oftentimes we will go to great extents in order to acquire that. Sometimes by pushing other people out of our way. Sometimes by climbing over other people so that we can elevate ourselves higher into what we think is a form of happiness. So sometimes we will abuse happiness and it will become a form of violence, which means it's not really happiness. We need to be clear on that and understand that. And keep our heart and our sight set on genuine happiness. And what is genuine happiness but the practice of unity? Genuine happiness is the practice of contentment. Genuine happiness is the practice of compassion and empathy. Genuine happiness is the practice of a certain kind of neutrality, that allows us to hold a sacred space for other individuals while we are still doing the work of alleviating pain and suffering in the world. Happiness is being with what is real and genuine and true, and not being with distractions, not being with what is unreal, not telling ourselves lies. Does that all make sense? Yeah. So happiness for happiness, neutrality for misbehaviors, compassion for suffering. This is another one that is very simple on the surface, but you go a little deeper and it's not simple at all, because we're judgy people. Sorry, but it's true. We look around the world and we're like, oh, they deserve it, or they asked for it, and all these different types of thoughts and ideas that go through our head that have actually been programmed into us to think. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength to change that programming, and to look out compassionately and to say, every single person in this room suffers, both necessarily and unnecessarily. We've talked about that to great depth in the past. Both at their own doing and because of things that are out of their control. There's no difference between us in that regard. So why should I condemn you for the suffering that you could have avoided, or the suffering that you brought upon yourself, when I've done the very same thing? It's calling the kettle black, don't you think? Instead, I can cultivate empathy and compassion. I can recognize the struggle that you're having as you're walking through this life, because it's the same exact struggle that I have. Details are different, but the struggle is the same. Details are different, but the suffering is the same. The details are different, but it doesn't mean that you have self-sabotaged any more or less than I have. We have all done that. So if we spend less time, I'm trying to find the right word. I wanted to say canceling each other out. But if we spend less time blaming each other, if we spend less time canceling each other, if we spend less time harming each other, then we open up ourselves to this absolutely beautiful potential of actually supporting and serving each other, of witnessing each other's journey, of being a light in a very dark world. It's interesting, because we oftentimes feel that we're entitled to say something. Like, I'm entitled to say when my kids make a mistake. I'm entitled to say if my partner makes a mistake. I'm entitled to say if a friend is misbehaving. I'm not entitled to anything. And sometimes that type of an attitude brings about more harm than good. Because now that person or persons is not only concerned and afraid of the rest of the world, but you've also stolen from them the sanctuary of you. Now they see you and they have to say, oh no, they're going to pile on top of me too. And when an individual is existing in that state of being, they're in what's called a state of fight or flight or freeze. And that is a dysregulation of the nervous system. And when a person is existing in that dysregulation of the nervous system, they don't have the space within themselves to make great decisions usually. They stay with what is familiar because it doesn't require a whole lot of energy that they don't have, because that energy has been zapped by the condition of the nervous system. So the greatest thing that you can do for a person who is making a lot of mistakes is learn how to have genuine conversation and communication with them. Learn how to share that you care without condemning. Learn how to have patience with them. Learn how to allow them to accept the responsibility themselves without telling them, you got to accept self-responsibility. Right? Learn how to be kind. Not nice. Kind. Very important. When we see somebody who we think is genuinely suffering, Remember that all beings are genuinely suffering, without exception. When you see an individual who you think is not suffering, bring yourself away from that ignorance and remind yourself every single being is suffering. I just can't see it because for whatever reason, maybe they're hiding it really well, or maybe I'm just blind to it because I have a bias against this person. I love the Taylor Swift song. I've never been a big Taylor Swift fan. I just was never attracted to her music until COVID pandemic, and then her Evermore, I think it is, album came out. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful album. But now her latest album, she's got this one song, and some of you, we did this the other day, and it says, "Hi, I'm the problem. It's me." We should be saying that to ourselves constantly, in a loving way. When we're about to judge another person, when we're about to put judgment on their suffering or judgment on their happiness, we should just close our eyes and say, "Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. I got my own problems. Let me work with those and stop sticking my nose into yours." So now next time you hear her song, you'll think of it a little differently. So compassion for other people's suffering, joy for the good things that come to them, and indifference or neutrality to their wrongdoings or misbehaviors. Any questions so far? Yes?
So I know we're all guilty of complaining and venting, but where do you draw the line between the two? Is there even a difference between complaining and venting? I know you said that complaining doesn't really provide anything for the situation that you're complaining about, but what about when it does provide you relief of getting something off of your chest?
Then you're not complaining, you're venting. Yeah. So complaining is saying, "Oh, the weather really sucks today." And then you just keep repeating it to yourself. And there's not really a goal to complaining. There's not really an end to it. It's just taking up space. Venting is something that's different. Venting is frustration. Venting is being faced with a problem, a circumstance, or a predicament and not knowing what the heck to do. And then feeling frustrated because of that. And so needing to vent will sometimes loosen up the energetic knots enough that you have a moment of opportunity to actually find solution, or to find a way to work towards solution, to find a way to contribute positively to what is needed. So there's a big difference. And also, when we seek out people randomly, like the person at the store, did anybody ever ask you when you're standing online at the store, say, "How's your day?" They just, like some random stranger just asked you how your day was, and did you ever go off on a tangent? Oh, it's just one of those days, I woke up this morning and the toothpaste cap went down the drain, and and here's this poor person being held hostage by your complaining, That's complaining. Venting is different. Venting is frustration. And so when we feel that we have something that we need to vent, let's find the right person or people to do that with. First of all, the ones that have given us permission, right? The ones who have said that they will sit with us and listen consciously and take in what it is that we're feeling and not judge us for it, or at least try not to, And the ones who may also open up a path towards solution, who might give us direction. So, when you come here and we sit here together on Sunday mornings and you share, that's not complaining. It is a form of venting because you have this sacred space, this sanctuary where you can explore the frustrations that you face in life. Absolutely purposeful. And you should continue if you're comfortable doing so, But when we go home and we post on Facebook, "Oh, it's been another one of those days, and so is acting like a jerk, and this is happening over here," that's complaining. Because not one person in that feed is necessarily going to give you anything valuable. They may actually contribute to your suffering by calling you a complainer, right? Because we know that's rampant on Facebook, right? The name calling on all of that. So just knowing the difference is helpful. certainly very, very helpful. Yeah, great question. Any other questions or comments? Yes?
I notice that I myself, this being neutral towards the evil or wrongdoing of others, it's much easier for me when it's someone I'm distant from. But if it's someone I care about, like my child or my parent or my partner, it's not because I think I'm superior, but I see the cause and effect of their actions and that it will lead them to more suffering. And I greatly want to save them or rescue them from that I'm like, if you do this, it will equal that. But it's this being neutral to this is gonna. I think I spent 50% of my life not being neutral.
Yeah.
So I have some room to work there. Namaste.
We all do. Namaste to you too. We all do. And here's another way to look at it also, because seriously, and like especially if you're a parent, or if you love anybody deeply, you don't want to see them suffer.
Yeah. And
you know that certain behaviors can lead to suffering. So what's the best way to go about that? Is it chastisement, or is it, again, learning communication, and have you considered the consequences of what this might bring about? And it's very interesting. So I'm educated as an archaeologist and an anthropologist with regard to some of my degrees. And one of the things that was really interesting is that there was a shift from hunter-gatherer to early cultivation, and then from early cultivation to agriculture. These are extremely different lifestyles, right? So your hunter-gatherers really knew nothing about the consequences of cultivation and agriculture at all until hindsight. And even hindsight after they no longer existed, the archaeologists are interpreting this. Some of the things that they saw was that as they moved from the hunter-gatherer and even early cultivation into a larger scale agriculture, we saw the consequences of a mono diet, or a trio diet, We saw the consequences of working in a field where they were tilling fields and tripping and breaking bones. We saw the consequences of power over storage. We saw all these consequences. They didn't see these consequences because they had no education over them. Same thing with your kid. Your kid is learning. They're tripping over the furrows in the field. They don't know, and they won't know until after the fact. So if we can remember that it's because they don't know. And then they also have the brain of, I'm invincible, right? So then it becomes a conversation about consequences, and it becomes a very important question, no matter how old the person is. It benefits each and every one of us to walk into a situation as much as we can, knowing that we may have to bear the responsibility of the consequences of our behavior. Are you willing to do that? Really? Just think about it. That's all. Yeah. Powerful, isn't it? Are they going to listen? Probably not. But that's because that's life. That's life. And we each have our own path to walk. And mostly when we witness other people, it's actually a reminder to ourselves. So remembering that is helpful too. And then understanding that what happens along their path is part of their path. And if they are hurt, if they're injured in some way, if they have consequences that they have to face, it's part of their learning experience.
And I don't need to rag or complain to them about how their behavior is going to equal more suffering.
Right.
That's not actually going to help.
Nope.
Sorry.
No need to apologize. These are big thoughts, These are big thoughts, and they're very freeing thoughts
too. It's really
too.
hard for me to let go when it's someone I really love, and I'm it's really difficult. And I've been very complaining at them about how their behavior will equal something negative, and I need to. That's really difficult to me to let go and let them experience those consequences, I guess.
Yeah. And then ask yourself why. Why is it difficult? Well, obviously because you love them. But there's another just as powerful reason, and it's your own fear. It's your own fear And so instead of looking at another person and saying, oh, you're going to suffer for this, and I don't want to see you suffer, that's only a half truth. The other half of it is, I'm sharing this with you because I'm fearful. I'm afraid. I don't want to see you suffer. I don't want to have to witness that. I don't know if I have the skill. So there's 50% that's love, and it's 50% that's fear. And take or give a few percent. Yeah.
Or for me, I feel it's like selfishness in a way, because I'm so empathic that I feel their suffering, so I want to stop my own suffering. If you could just stop so much suffering, I don't have to feel all your suffering.
Yeah. It seems like there's a couple of levels of empathy, and I know, Amber, you had a thought too. I'll get to you in a moment. There's a couple of different... Oh, no, don't apologize. That's what this is for. There's different levels of what we call empathy. And the first level is a widespread epidemic of oversensitization, where you feel everything. And that is a form of empathy, but it's not a healthy empathy. It is hypersensitization to stimulation. And the things that you can do to support yourself, if you're one of the 64% of people who report having this experience, is you can learn how to ground yourself. You can learn how to allow others to own their own energy. And you can learn how to not take control or take ownership or take even the idea of, I'm feeling your energy. Learn how to put up a healthy boundary to that. And then learn how to go to another level of empathy. And the level of empathy takes for some people it's kind of born into them, and for other people it takes a long time and training. But that other level of empathy is to understand, is to see and understand with every pair of eyes that you look into, with every circumstance that you witness, that there is going to be suffering in this circumstance, and there is also going to be joy or happiness. And that those two things are not necessarily diametrically opposed to one another. And then you will hold a space for that, because you understand that if they're not suffering here, they're going to suffer here. If they don't suffer here, they're going to suffer here. No matter what they do, they're going to suffer. You go out to dinner, beautiful plans to go out to dinner, a very fancy restaurant, and you're like, oh, this is going to make me so happy. And you sit down and you say, well, I'm vegetarian and gluten-free, and the waiter says, can't help you. You've waited years to go to this real fancy restaurant, and you just assumed, that they were going to be able to cater to you. Just give me vegetables. I don't care. Broccoli on the plate. And they're like, oh, everything is co-contaminated. We don't cater to special diets. And so now something that you thought was going to bring you great happiness is actually causing you a great deal of suffering if you haven't trained yourself how to respond to this, right? And every single thing in life is like that, no matter what it is. Dayananda and Brahmani are going to have a baby. Is that okay? I know. It's such a beautiful, happy experience. But wait till that baby gets to be in the twos. Learns how to walk, opening cabinets, right? Wait till that baby learns how to say no. Yeah. So while there's so much love and happiness and joy, wait till the worry kicks in, and it probably already has. What's going to happen when the child is 5, 6, 7, 10, 25? Who are they going to marry? Yeah. So for just as much of the love and happiness that's there, there's also suffering. They're opposite sides of the same coin. They go together. So stop trying to save other people from their suffering, and instead address your own fear and learn how to communicate and talk about consequences.
Fear, really. I'm such a warrior. I like rock climb, sail over oceans, and I'm very sensitive, but I'm also so totally grounded and desensitized myself, like in huge waves and massive seas.
I wonder how many people worry about you.
But I don't. But when it's someone I love and they're like say they're you're addicted to a drug. It's very obvious that like this action will cause you supreme suffering if you continue down this path.
Absolutely.
And I get very like, I want to plead with them or get them to like wake up and realize the consequence. I mean, I'm intense about it.
Mm-hmm.
I get very attached to the outcome of what will happen if they continue down that way.
Yeah.
I mean, really intensely.
Is there a consequence though?
Yeah.
It's their path, so it's their
If it's your
consequence.
child and they're doing a bunch of drugs and they're going to die if they continue doing those drugs, as a mother, I don't know if you just sit back and go, oh,
No.
you know, I feel like I would have to not allow that consequence to be on my watch, homie. I mean, no. I'm out at sea. I take care of people's life. I climb, I fly. There's no one's died around me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow that to be.
But you
I mean,
can't
not on my
stop it.
watch.
Right. But I think the whole point is that
Sorry to be so intense, but I mean, it's like, you
it's
know.
understandable though. It's understandable because nobody wants that to happen.
Right.
And yet it happens every day, doesn't it?
Yeah. Just,
Yeah,
okay,
nobody
well,
wants
that's
it. Nobody wants it to happen.
And I learn it every day. I have to surrender. I just have to completely surrender. I cannot control the outcome of their choices. And
Absolutely. But what you can control over time and with a lot of learning is your communication methods with them, the way you let them know that you love them, the way that you hold a space for them to fall down.
and not shaming them.
And
for
not
that.
shaming
I try
them.
everything to get them to change, and I start being a negative influence in ways, like creating a negative vibe. Like how she said earlier, if you're sitting there relaxing, enjoying the day, and then someone comes up and starts complaining at you. I do that kind of energy to people sometimes, and I really need to check that. Thank you all so much for letting me go through this process here. Long-winded, we'll try to listen again.
You're fine. You're fine. Absolutely. You know, we don't talk about easy topics in here. Our kind of spirituality isn't sparkles and unicorns. I'm sorry. It's just not. We talk about the strengths and the weaknesses associated with self-responsibility and consequences and behavior and violence and love and all that comes along with that. And these are the kind of conversations that are meaningful, is to say, you know what, I feel so intensely about this. I want to shake my kid and tell them, stop it. But there needs to be, for your own sanity and sake, an idea in the back of your mind and understanding that in the end, I can't control this. I can't control. It's not for me to control. All I can do is let them know how much I love them. Let them know that I'm here for them and support them when they need to be picked back up. And also accept my own anger, accept my own grief, accept my own fear, and not run away from it in avoidance. Because when something like that is happening and there's someone close to you who's suffering from an addiction, it's not just them you're looking to save. I'm sorry, it's you also. And it might even be you a little bit more, because you don't want to have that suffering yourself. I don't want to lose my child. So that has to be looked at also, and looked at honestly, so that you can offer compassion to yourself also, empathy to yourself also. Amber, what did you want to contribute?
I think you tied that together beautifully when Savannah had mentioned complaining and venting and complaining and suffering. It led me into when you have compassion, and where do you draw with your intentions and your behavior in regards to like displaced humans or homeless people. Like, I want my intentions and behaviors to align. I have a brother-in-law who would say, oh, they're lazy. I'm like, are they lazy or are they suffering? And me sitting and crying in the car isn't going to help, but I've been homeless myself. And I'm like, it's a fear. Would someone judge me or help me? And how do I align my intentions with my behaviors?
Yeah, it's a great, great question. And one thing that I can say is, if another person comes and says they're just lazy, that statement in and of itself is evidence that they haven't done self-inquiry in regard to this particular matter. They haven't committed themselves to self-inquiry or to the inquiry about suffering universally or any of these things. So to even respond to that, and it, I mean, yes, absolutely you can respond to it, but don't respond with an expectation that it's going to change their heart or their mind. Because again, this is a person who's walking through a furrowed field who doesn't know that there's a broken bone waiting to happen, right? Totally. So in that regard, you can look at every other person in the same way. We worry so much about what people think of us. We worry so much about how they're going to judge us, you know. But your path is not about other people's judgments. Never has been and never will be. Whether you're homeless or you're not homeless, whether you are addicted or not addicted, whether you are committing poor behavior yourself or you're not committing poor behavior yourself. Your path is for your learning and your learning alone. Cultivating confidence in that understanding will empower you to take a greater control over your own presence and depend less upon other people's validation. Because other people aren't going to validate you. Not really. They'll pat you on the shoulder one day and punch you in the other arm the next. You know, people are fickle. We can't depend on them for constant validation. We have to find a way to understand that our journey, no matter what it has entailed, no matter how horrific or glorious, it has purpose. And the purpose is to show us very clearly our dharma, our duty in this life. And it's not up to somebody else to negate that. But that takes a lot of self-inquiry, and it takes a lot of faith. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of strength building, courage, to be able to say, your brother's statement was very hurtful, but to take that as a reflection of your own self is not correct. What he said had nothing to do with you. It didn't even really have anything to do with the homeless person. What did it have to do with? His own ignorance. And that's not a judgment, as in he's like ignorant. You know, it's not like name calling. It's saying it's a blackout area for him. He is not seeing clearly. And there's not much that you can do about that except practice your own clarity. And you don't have to throw your own clarity in his face either. So we do that a lot, don't we? Like, oh, I'm spiritual. You're obviously not. You know, we do that. It's you know, so don't do that. Just don't do that. You know, don't look at another person's ignorance and be like feeling superior to that, or feel like you have to throw your own understanding in their face. Because no, just as that's his blackout area, there's other areas in life where you have blackout. Yeah. And so look at it as a kind of a reflection of the work that needs to be done. And the work that needs to be done in that circumstance is to cultivate courage and self-confidence and faith in your own path, in your own way, and to start relying less and less and less upon the passive insults that another person may say, you know. Yeah. It's a very powerful reflection. Thank you, Amber.
The hypersensitivity is messy.
Yeah.
My emotions are
Oh, God.
messy.
So true.
And I don't want to expose myself to his rage and his strong opinions.
I think that one of the most difficult things for a hypersensitive person to do is to keep a healthy boundary.
Yeah.
Like, you see that he's got some kind of rage going on, and you know you don't want to be accessible to that. But you fear that if you put up a healthy boundary and say, nothing past this line, you fear that, number one, he's not going to like you. Number two, he's not going to talk to you. Number three, he's going to get mad at you. So it starts to look like a no-win situation. But the reality is, the first time you stand up and say, I won't tolerate this kind of talking because it hurts my heart. I'm not saying I won't tolerate this kind of talk because you're garbage. No, I won't tolerate this kind of talk because it hurts my heart. I'm taking responsibility over this. This is hurting my heart. I don't have the skill right now to deal with these types of commentaries, these passive-aggressive statements, whatever it happens to be. Stand, you say, no, it cannot. I will not take part in this. And if you need to be upset with me about it, that's okay. If you need to be angry with me about it, fine. But when you're ready to talk about it, not yell about it, but when you're ready to talk about it in a way that you have come to know yourself to be able to communicate, then let me know. Always keep a door open because people change. Are you the same as when you were 7?
Oh, no.
Are you the same as when you were 16?
Oh, no.
Are you the same as when you were 20?
I hope not.
Right? We're always changing. So your brother will change somehow, some way too. So you keep a little bit of a door open in case he decides, well, you know, if Amber's upset about this, maybe that's something we should talk about. Yeah. But in the meantime, healthy boundary. And that will help with the hypersensitivity.
Cut to me driving through the city and I have to stop at every homeless person and give them something. So that's messy too.
That's messy, but that's also guilt. It's messy, but it's also guilt. Now you need to stop feeling guilty. And if you encounter a homeless person and you happen to have something with you to offer them, fine. But to feel that you have to seek them out in some unhealthy way is guilt over your own unresolved feelings from a time when you were homeless. And so don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I think it's a beautiful thing to give. I'm a karma yogi, I think it's a beautiful thing. So if you're going to go to the city and you know that you have this tendency, then organize a trip to the city specifically for this purpose.
That's my intentions and my behaviors.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Whereas if you're going to the city to go see a show, don't make diversions down 15 different blocks so that you can meet your quota. No. Am I right? I mean, right? We all do it. Every single one of us. Intention. Absolutely. And you have such a beautiful soul, and you serve so many. Don't stop serving at all, but don't feel guilty about serving. That's powerful. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel guilty about your own life, any of you, and don't feel guilty because you long to serve. Serve intentionally. That's what you're here for. It's part of your dharma. And don't make excuses for your service either. Right? We say to people, well, I know they're homeless, or I know they're addicted. No, they're suffering, period. And I've decided to align myself with my dharma, and part of my dharma is to work toward the alleviation of suffering, period. It really is that, but then the mind and the ego come in and make a mess out of it. Yeah.
I just wanted to say this has been so helpful, and I'm so happy that I'm here, and thank you and to everyone. And I would ask that if people pray or send positive vibes. My father fell, he's 84, he fell on February 10th, broke his hip. He was doing so well. He's a recent widower to my mother, and so it's been a rough time. And he's still in a rehab, but he is getting better every day, and he's coming back to his house he's counting 11 days. Better not change that because he has, he's very determined. And I guess I'm struggling with, balancing working full time, my 2 children, my house, my marriage, my own issues, trying to be the best daughter I can be. I'm trying to do the things that come natural to me. There's many of us, so we have more than one person helping, which is lucky. But I take his clean laundry, and I take his mail, and I visit with him as much as I can, and I get his whatever food he wants, or, I try to do these things, but it is a good feeling to help, and I enjoy being with him, but it's like, I think the thing of like just feeling his pain so much, even when he's in good spirits, like I know he's unhappy on different levels, even though he's trying to be, like our family, we always like try to be really happy, like even if we're not, because we like try to all cheer each other up, and you know, we kind of probably want to be the best we can be, which is a good thing, but it's like, it's just, there's sometimes it's just stinks, you know, like just stuff stinks, and it's just,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I guess this conversation is very helpful, but I have to just figure out how to be a good daughter and be giving and be kind, even though it's like a long road, you know, like when you have elderly parents and they have, you know,
You are
it's your
a
honor
loving
to
daughter.
do it. It's my honor to do it, but it's still hard. you
Yeah.
know?
And you are a loving daughter, and you are a good person, and you are kind, and you are caring. You already are those things. And your behavior exemplifies that. So it's a question of your belief about how much you can handle. Now, it's kind of a little bit of a complicated conversation, but life happens. And things get put onto our plate. And our plate, we tell ourselves, is only so big. So maybe I have a little sandwich plate, and somebody put too much mashed potatoes, and now they're falling off the side, and it's freaking me out. So I start telling myself, well, my plate is full, and I really can't handle anymore. But the reality is, if I looked at the plate differently, it's okay if things fall off of it,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't have to hold everything neatly. I don't have to, work a full day and then take care of my kids and then take care of my parents and still feel yay energy. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to be frustrated. If I can give myself some of these permissions and stop seeing my plate as being limited to a nice, neat, all the colors of the rainbow in their proper position, beautiful presentation. If I can recognize and accept the messiness of life, then that's number one. That supports me right there, because then if I can accept the messiness of life and I can accept that my life is messy, then I can also accept that, hey, I need a cry fest every once in a while. And instead of sitting in with family and trying to make each other happy, which is a very beautiful thing, how about you get together and cry? Get together and be sad together. Grieve together. Because that is a greater comfort. A far greater comfort when you're facing life's difficulties together. And then when the joy comes back, when the happiness comes back, it's a more relaxed happiness and it's not as forced. Does that make sense? Yeah. So allow yourself to feel the overwhelmedness. There's nothing wrong with you because you feel overwhelmed. Every single person here has so much going on. And the thing is, we deny it. We say, oh, well, I should be able to do all of this. I shouldn't be upset. I have to be a good person. Well, what is a good person? You are a good person. You are a good person, but you're a good person who's overwhelmed. And because you have a picture in your mind of what that plate is supposed to look like, and you have a picture in your mind of what good is supposed to look like, you've talked yourself into believing that you're not a good person unless you can keep your plate in order. But the plate's never in order. Nope, there's always somebody adding more mashed potatoes. Or making really great chocolate parfaits.
Get me started.
And no, 1 second, Savannah. Right? Or those roasted potatoes. It's like there's always something else. And the mind is really good at shifting, but it's not really great at shifting perspective. It's good at distraction. It's not good at a healthy perspective. So be honest about how you feel. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I know I'm going to do this because I love my father. I love my family. But I also love me. And in order to love me best, that's another song that's out right now, right? That Miley Cyrus song, right?
Yeah.
I could buy myself flowers.
I like that.
Yeah. And she was another one. I never really,
I never liked her
never.
before
But
the
that
song,
song is awesome.
Yeah, it's
so
the first
good.
song. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club, sister.
Yeah, so be present as you can, and understand that there's going to be a component of overwhelmingness to it, and make sure that no matter how overwhelmed you are, no matter how much else is going on, that you do take time for yourself, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour or 3 hours, that you do take time for yourself, and that you take time to grieve. Not later, now.
Thank you.
Yeah, because the more that you stuff it, the harder it gets to experience it, for sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I just want you all to know that I'm so honored that you feel comfortable to come here and to share and to talk about these difficult things and to make your way through them as best you can. And I just pray that you feel that the space is being held for you. Savannah, yeah.
I reiterate that sentiment. That's what I was going to start with. I'm really grateful to everyone who's shared their experiences. It's been really helpful to me, and I just want to reflect back on our discussion about addiction. My older brother struggled with addiction, and it ultimately took his life. And when I was a teenager, and I resented him very strongly throughout that process, and the fury that I directed towards him, I knew, but it just helped me click in my mind our discussion that was because I wanted to save myself from the suffering that was being created from that, and that just really helped me solidify that. But I want to follow up with a question, and it's a big question, but I think we've touched on it a little bit. How can you work towards indifference towards the misbehaviors of others when they are done intentionally to hurt you?
Yeah, such a great question. It really, really is. And sadly, it's an experience that too many people have. So many people have. So you are entitled to protect yourself. And no one should ever doubt that. You are absolutely entitled to protect yourself. So whatever that happens to mean to a person is a personal decision. Building and maintaining healthy boundaries, having a support network in place, and studying the situation, not obsessive compulsively, but looking at the situation honestly with yourself and saying, is there any other way that I need to protect myself here? Is there any other thing that I need to do in order to keep myself safe? And looking at maybe the loopholes that you've overlooked, right? Like answering the phone. You don't have to answer the phone. I kid you not. So most of you know that I had a very traumatic upbringing, and I was in counseling for many years to come to some relationship with that. And there's some gems that my counselors shared with me, my two counselors, Marion and Judy, just the most amazing women in the world. And I'll never forget the one day Marion, I was talking about my mother calling on the phone, and she looked at me and she said, "Why do you answer?" And I looked at her, I said, "Because this is my mother calling." She's like, "Yeah, but you don't have to answer. You don't have to answer the phone." And it was a loophole that I had totally overlooked. I just, you feel like it's the parent calling, you have to answer, even if all they're going to do is yell at you. And from that point forward, if I didn't feel that I was in a place, if I didn't feel in that moment I had the skills accessible to me to deal with whatever was on the other end of that line, I let it go to messages. And then guess what? I often didn't listen to the message. So look where the loopholes are and create healthy boundaries there as well. And then understand that, we can't stop the person who's going to be violent from being violent. Wherever it is that they find themselves, if that is the nature that they are surrendering to, then it's not within us to stop them, but it is within us to maintain what we need in order to keep ourselves safer and in order to potentially support others in being safe as well. I wish there was something more direct that I could say, but that's it, And sometimes it's hard. I know that there's a lot of talk about, communication with someone who has hurt you in the past. Should you cut off communication with them? And really, it just depends on what's best for you. What's best for you. It's interesting, with an individual in my own life in the deep past, I realized that cutting off communication with that individual was actually the kindest thing I could do for them. Because by maintaining communication with them, I was giving them the constant opportunity to be violent in their words. And so the only way that I could change that was by saying, I'm no longer accessible for you at this point in my life. I can't be, because I won't contribute to your suffering. And providing that space where they could speak to me in whatever way they wanted to was allowing them to be violent. So that's something else to think about also. Yeah. Anybody else? We have time for maybe one more.
I just wanted to add something to Francine, when you asked for prayer or positive thoughts, and Swamini's mention of community, and that you had too much on your plate, but you're a plate in a room full of plates.
Yeah.
There's room for us to hold not only compassion, but real support.
That's beautiful, thank
Yeah,
you.
it was brief of you to ask.
Isn't that wonderful? So any mashed potatoes that fall off Francine's plates, you got it. Absolutely.
Well, we're about to have brunch.
Totally. That's beautiful, Amber. Thank you. Yes. That makes a pretty big platter, doesn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah. That's really good. All right. Let's sit tall. Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that too, something that really helped me in a similar situation. A grief counselor talked to me and said, "Can you do it today?" And that changed everything for me. Yes, I can do it today. And then the next day I asked myself the same question. And then I didn't have to think about a week, a month, a year of taking care of someone. So hopefully that helps you a little bit too. Can I do it today?
Yeah. That's very true. Very true. And just before we close, the fourth of these beautiful qualities that we should cultivate in our relationship with self and others is friendliness toward the friendly. Friendliness toward the friendly. And so I like to say that this one should be directed at self first. Because too often we feel that we don't deserve to be happy, that we're fake, that our feelings aren't genuine somehow, that we have imposter syndrome. It's such a thing today. Just be friendly to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be good to yourself. And when you see somebody else who's friendly, just be friendly. Just be kind. Don't question their motivations. Don't look for the next bomb to drop. Just be grateful that there is a friendly person and that you have had the honor of encountering them. Yeah. Okay. Let's sit tall and close the eyes. And draw the hands together in front of the heart. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May our words, our thoughts, and our actions have something to do with that. And we'll lift our voices in one Om. Hario, Jai Mata Di. Thank you all so much for being here today. So good to see each and every one of you. And wonderful to gather with you. It's so good to be back. I missed you all. It was wonderful to be online with you, but it's so beautiful to be here in person. So now I'm going to cry. Thank you. So enjoy your brunch and make sure that you have your plate right there in case anybody drops anything. Especially the little treats that are out there. They look really good.